The New England Patriots are fresh off an AFC championship in what was a dream season for Patriots fans. Drakemaye took the step that many people were expecting. The head coach hire of Mike Vrabel worked to perfection. And despite some of the imperfections of this Patriots roster, they still made the Super Bowl. And that was a huge accomplishment for a team that many people didn't expect to be much more than a wild card team. But a big conversation all offseason has been the schedule that the Patriots played and how they didn't really face any quote unquote real opponents. And while that may be true for last year's Patriots, this is a completely new season. And this Patriots roster is very interesting. And despite having a harder schedule where, spoiler alert, I think they probably lose more games, this might be a better overall Patriots team than last year's AFC champions. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the moves that the Patriots made. We'll talk about the coaches. We'll talk about the roster and if they can get back to the Super Bowl for a second straight season. But if you guys do enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button as a football animation will appear when you do so. And comment down below if you guys think that the Patriots are going to be better or worse in 2026. But let's talk about this Patriots team, and as always, start with the coaching staff, where we'll talk about Mike Vrabel, who was an absolute dream as a first-year head coach here in New England. And as a Colts fan, like having to face Mike Vrabel multiple times a year when he coached the Titans was a nightmare because he was always just really good at adjusting, playing different types of defensive looks, being very multiple, but I think what really sticks out about Mike Vrabel is just how good of a leader he is. And he is a guy that is able to consistently get the most out of not great roster talent. And this Patriots team last year fell into that category. They were not a great offense last year. They had a lot of question marks. And despite not having the talent, it feels like Mike Vrabel, more so than most head coaches, is able to create buy-in in a way that not a lot of coaches, I think, are able to do. Yes, he kind of falls into that Patriot way. He's a coach that does come from a defensive background. He obviously played linebacker here for the Patriots for a long time. And so he will bring more of his defensive schemes to the table. That's kind of his bread and butter as a defensive head coach. But ultimately, with Mike Vrabel, I see him much more as a CEO and leader of the locker room type, where he's going to create buy-in. He's going to get the most out of his players and put his teams in the best situations to succeed. And I think it's what makes Mike Vrabel one of the 10 or so best head coaches in the league and was an absolutely brilliant hire. And it was a no-brainer for the Patriots last offseason when he was available. This is a really interesting Patriots defensive staff where it's kind of a three-headed monster. You've got Mike Vrabel, and then Zach Kerr is the defensive coordinator here. They're going to run a very multiple defense. I think very similar to a guy like Lou Anarumo. It's very multiple. You're going to see them differentiate between 3-4 and 4-3. They're going to move the safeties around. They're going to not blitz a ton. They ranked around middle of the league in blitz rate in 2025. But towards the back half of the season and as we got into the playoffs, this was a team that started to blitz more. They started to heat up opposing quarterbacks. When you're playing the Chargers and Texans offensive lines, it's pretty easy to do that. But they'll rotate their safeties, and I think that he's a very multiple defensive mind, as is Zach Kerr, who I think is a up-and-coming defensive mind in this league. There are things to get pretty excited about when you look at this defensive-oriented staff. And I think it makes them a really tough team to play on a week-to-week basis because you never really know what version of this team you're going to get because they can adjust on the fly. So I don't have enough positive things to say about Mike Vrabel. I would say I wish he didn't get in with the Diana Rossini situation. I'm not going to say it's going to affect the team this season, but it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth of the organization, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't think it'll affect the play really at all. But the offensive staff here is also in pretty good shape, where you have Josh McDaniels, who, look, Josh McDaniels is a very polarizing head coach candidate, obviously a failed head coach in both Denver and the Raiders. And he's been in New England forever, it feels like. But He's a great offensive mind, and what he was able to create with drakemaye last season was absolute magic. I think very similarly to the defensive staff, this is a Patriots team that can be very multiple. Like, you're going to see a ton of different looks here from the Patriots where it does require a lot of the quarterback. Can he read coverages? Is he going to be able to play out of play action and read different looks? But he's evolved as a run game coordinator a little bit. You saw a lot more gap and power. This is a Patriots team that, unlike most teams in the league, they will play with multiple running backs and even a fullback on the field at times. They were fourth in the NFL in 21 personnel, and they bring in Reggie Gilliam. I think that number could go up even higher. They're going to play with the fullback on the field. They're going to try to open this run game up, and I think that that's a very important distinction when you've got the running backs that this Patriots team has. But they're a versatile offense. They can play under center. They can play out of the play action. You're going to see 21 personnel. You're going to see 12 personnel. They're going to lean into some heavier looks. They're going to, really just create conflict with the defense. And, I don't know that he's doing anything spectacular. I think the passing game has always been a good staple of Josh McDaniels' offense, but he understands quarterback play better than most people in the league, having coached Tom Brady for over a decade. And I think that that really matters. And so the other positive things about Josh McDaniels is you don't have to worry about him going anywhere, because I don't think anybody's going to hire Josh McDaniels as a head coach at this point. So when I look at this Patriots staff, I think it is a very well thought out staff that's very multiple, and you're led by one of the best head coaches in the NFL in Mike Vrabel, and it's going to make this roster very exciting to talk about, because you not only have a great coaching staff, but the next most important thing is, do you have the quarterback? And I think without a shadow of the doubt, New England has their quarterback in drakemaye, who was absolutely phenomenal in year 2. Year 1 for drakemaye, there were a lot of positives and a lot of things to get really excited about from him. Didn't end up starting the whole season, but you saw why people loved drakemaye as a prospect. And in 2025, he was absolutely incredible, where he threw for over 5,000 yards, 37 touchdowns, had 12 interceptions, including the playoffs, and was incredible. I mean, there's not a lot of negatives to really say about drakemaye as a quarterback in year 2. He was incredibly accurate with the football, where he completed 70% of his passes with a 77% adjusted completion rate, which is a number you love to see. He's got an incredible arm. He's able to throw go balls better than I think he might be the best go ball thrower in the NFL already. He is stupid accurate with the football. He's able to lead his receivers with incredible touch and timing. He's got a really high big-time throw percentage at nearly 5%. He's accurate with the football. He's got a great arm. And as an athlete, I think he's able to make plays with his legs. He had 271 total accounted for first downs. But as a rusher, I do really like what he brings. He had over 600 yards and 5 touchdowns as a runner last season, which I think is really important. Josh McDaniels hasn't really tapped into the quarterback run game as much as I think they would like to see. So when you look at drakemaye, there's not a lot of negatives there. He's accurate. He's got the arm talent. I think that his processing is really solid. He challenges the middle of the field, which is an area that I did have question marks about when he was coming out of North Carolina. But he threw up the numbers really well and was able to challenge the seam with those beautiful go balls that he throws. However, the playoffs were about as brutal as I think you could have possibly imagined for drakemaye. And you can point a lot of fingers. You can say that drakemaye was hurt. You can say that the offensive line wasn't 100% healthy. You can make those claims, and those claims would be justified to an extent. But the fact of the matter is that the last time we saw drakemaye was in the Super Bowl, and he was not good in the Super Bowl. He was not good in the AFC Championship game against Denver. He wasn't even that great against Houston in the divisional round. The accuracy came way down. He took a bunch of unnecessary hits, and I think that's the area that you want to see drakemaye improve upon. His pressure to sack rate in 2025 was nearly 24%. And for a quarterback that was pressured almost 300 times, which isn't an astronomically high number. He needs to do a better job at developing that sixth sense, recognizing where pressure is coming from, stepping up in the face of pressure, and still being able to deliver really good passes. And I think that was the area. He was sacked 5 or more times in all 4 playoff games. And that's where I think you saw a big dip. And when he had to play against some of the better defenses in the league, Pittsburgh wasn't the greatest game from him early on in the season. Cleveland, he had some up and down moments in that game. I think that's the biggest concern with Drakemaye right now is can he develop that pocket sense and pocket presence to develop into being not just a franchise quarterback, but one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the league. And I think he's right on the cusp of that already entering year 3. But we have seen a lot of these young quarterbacks go out, have big seasons, and then they kind of taper off. We saw it with CJ Stroud. I think Justin Herbert kind of fell into that category, and a lot of people still love Justin Herbert. Jaden Daniels last season. So let's see what we get from Drakemaye. I am still a very big Drakemaye believer, and I think he's going to have a really awesome season here. In terms of the backup room, you got Tommy DeVito, who I think is a perfectly solid backup quarterback, and you drafted Baron Morton in the 7th round, who I was not a very big fan of really whatsoever. So overall, a solid quarterback room. I like the depth here. The running back room is going to be fascinating. This is something I'm really interested to see because you've got a 2-headed monster at running back. They're going with that more thunder and lightning approach that we've seen so many teams go for. And Ramondre Stevenson is the thunder for this team and was really solid for the Patriots last season, especially down the stretch of the regular season. Ended up missing some time due to injury, but had 820 yards, 7 touchdowns, and from week 6 on, he didn't have a single fumble, which has been a big question mark with Ramondre Stevenson throughout his career. I think Ramondre is a perfectly solid RB1. Do I think he's got the greatest speed? No. But what I love about Ramondre Stevenson is the yards after contact per attempt. He averaged about 3.5 yards after contact per attempt last season. And for a Patriots team that wants to run a lot more power run sets, Ramondre Stevenson is awesome for that role. He's going to be able to play with power, get downfield, make some really tough runs, and just churn out extra yardage. I think he's going to be a really important factor for this team, and there's a lot to really like. I don't think he's got the craziest speed or anything like that, but he's a good power back. But what you're hoping for as a Patriots fan is that TreVeyonhenderson really develops into being a true workhorse number 1 running back. And I'll be honest, I'm not totally convinced that'll happen. I was never the biggest TreVeyonhenderson fan, even in his draft class. Like, I thought TreVeyonhenderson was a good running back prospect that had some speed, that had some upside, but was not really a player that I really loved. I thought that he was not great as an inside runner. He was much better utilized as an outside zone runner, so I don't love the scheme fit. He was a great blocker. I liked the speed and the open field ability, but the vision has been an inconsistent area for him, and he had a solid rookie season by most numbers, but I still just have some question marks because he really didn't separate himself. He had a really good game against Tampa Bay in week 10 where he had that big 69-yard run, and then he had a 65-yard run against Buffalo in week 15. Those were his biggest plays of the season. Outside of those 2 runs, his longest run of the season was just 27 yards. You didn't really see the big play speed from him, even as a returner. Took good care of the football, but the blocker, the receiver that we saw out of Ohio State was not really there. We didn't see him really impact the game as a blocking pass protection back, which was something that I think many people were expecting. And in the playoffs, he just was not very good. He had a combined 76 yards over the 4 playoff games. For a guy that you drafted in the top 40 of the draft, I don't love that. And in the games that he had to start, his yards per attempt were just over 3 yards if you take away the 2 big runs, which I know you can't technically do, but I'm hesitant on TreVeyonhenderson. That's all I'll say. I think that he does provide them a good speed element that is important to have next to Ramondre Stevenson, but I'm not totally convinced that he's going to emerge as this superstar top 5-10 running back in the league. Outside of those two, though, you don't have a lot of guys. You got Lan Larison, who's a fun receiving option. You got Jam Miller, who I did not like really whatsoever. That's kind of it for the running back room. Reggie Gilliam's here as a fullback, and we don't talk about a lot of the fullbacks here, but he's been a pretty solid player really throughout his career. He's the fourth highest paid fullback in the league right now. Solid blocker, a guy that's going to really help them in heavy personnel. I think he's going to be a good fit for when they do run 21 personnel. So overall, a very solid running back room with a good 1-2 punch. I don't know that there's a ton of upside here because I'm not the highest on TreVeyon but overall, like a good group of running backs. And it takes you to the receiving room, which is one of the most interesting groups in the league to me. They did a really, really good job of going out and recognizing like, hey, we've got some question marks on this group. Let's go out and let's go trade for one of the best receivers in the league in ajbrown. ajbrown grew up as a Patriots fan. There's been a lot of excitement about him coming here. He's been linked here for the last couple of years, and it finally happened. Now, what I will say about ajbrown, he is coming off a down season for the Eagles, where you just didn't really see the same player from him. Like, I thought the first half of the season, he was kind of average. The contested catch numbers came down from where they were the last couple of seasons. The counting stats came down. He's had around 1,500 yards 2 of the last 3 seasons. He just went over 1,000 yards. He had 1,003 yards in the regular season. I'm not saying that ajbrown is regressing, but at 6'1", 226, his size, speed, there were some motor concerns from him last season with the Eagles. Now, that entire Eagles offense was a complete mess. I don't totally blame him for that, and Jalen Hurts was not good last year. I do love the skill set, though. For ajbrown, who's one of the best pure vertical receivers in the league and one of the best deep threats, you pair him alongside drakemaye, who, as we talked about, is one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. I love that. ajbrown catches everything. He's strong. He's physical at the catch point. He's got familiarity with Mike Vrabel, having played with him in Tennessee. And I think he's going to be able to make plays happen after the catch, where he is dynamic and he's got big play speed. So they have a legit number 1 receiver here. Even if you get the version of ajbrown that the Eagles had last year, I still think he's better than what you had on the roster. And then you also signed Romeo Doubs, who I've always been a big Romeo Doubs fan dating back to when he was at Nevada. He really started to put some stuff together last season, stayed healthy for a majority of the year. Concussions have really hurt him throughout his career. The drop rate came down for him. The contested catch numbers did come down a little bit. I think he's a solid player, though. He's a decent route runner. He's got really strong hands. He's got the ability to make plays in space. Was awesome in the wild card matchup against Chicago. Like, there's some things to really like about Romeo Doubs. I think he can separate and be your true Y or Z receiver for you. I love that for them. I think he's a guy that's got some real upside to continue to progress. And that's a really good 1-2 punch. In terms of depth on the boundary, though, you've got Kayshon Boutte, who has been he was really good for this team last year. And as a Colts fan, I would love for my team to trade for Kayshon Boutte. He's very similar to Romeo Doubs in that he's not this superstar freak athlete, but he's got pretty strong hands. He can win some tough catches. He's a good route runner, can create separation, and had some big games in there for the Patriots last year. I like that. You've got Mac Hollins, who's here as some, I think, veteran depth option. And then in the slot, I think you've got 3 guys that really interest you. Demario Douglas is the first guy who is a good slot receiver. He's very small. He is kind of used sparingly for this team, but he's just a dynamic playmaker. I was kind of expecting more from him in this offense. He's got some speed. He's really good after the catch. They like to get him the ball kind of in the short to intermediate part of the field and have him go make a play. He's more physical than you would expect for a 5'8" receiver. He's a fine slot receiver option for you. I'm really intrigued by Kyle Williams, who doesn't sound like is having the greatest training camp right now. But when he saw the field and he didn't play much, I thought that he showed some really good dynamic playmaking ability. He had 2 drops on the season on just 27 targets, so you want to see that get better. But I think he's got speed, big play, vertical ability, and could be a good deep ball threat from the slot. He just needed to improve as like a more physical weapon. And then Efton Chisholm, I loved Efton Chisholm out of his draft class. I thought that he was a snappy route runner, a guy that felt very similar to like Cooper Kupp coming from the same school. I have my eye on him to potentially develop into more of a big time role here, but a good receiver room that is massively upgraded with the additions of AJ Brown and Romeo Doubs. And I know you'll lose Stephon Diggs, but I think this is a really good trio. And then the tight end room where you've got Hunter Henry. I think the reason that we didn't see a lot of 12 personnel from this team is that Hunter Henry is just an average run blocker. They didn't really have a lot else. You had Austin Hooper here. Hunter Henry throughout his career has been a perfectly suitable receiving tight end, and he actually had a career high in yards last season with 880 yards, including the playoffs. He's got strong hands. He's a pretty solid overall route runner and just receiving entity, can win some tough catches. I think you like Hunter Henry for what he is. You wish he could give you a little bit more as like a run blocker. Never really been a big strength of his. You're hoping that the rookie Eli Raridan could develop into that role, who I didn't really see a lot of great blocking on his tape. To me, was much more of a passing game oriented type of tight end. And then you also have CJ Dupree, who I actually think could play for this team as like a blocker. We'll kind of go through this tight end room quickly. I mean, it's a fine group. I don't think it's anything spectacular, but you've got Hunter Henry, who I think is a solid tight end that rounds out a very good group of skill positions that still has a lot of upside, in my opinion. If Kyle Williams or Efton Chisholm can really hit and develop into being like a really good player, this could be a really fun team. So let's talk about the offensive line. Let's round this offense out with the offensive line. And let's talk about Will Campbell, who I know Patriots fans, he was public enemy number 1 last season. And I don't really think that he deserved that. Yes, he was really bad in the Super Bowl. He allowed 8 pressures. He allowed a sack in the Super Bowl. And the divisional round against Houston, he allowed 4 pressures, 2 sacks. He allowed 4 of his 9 sacks in the playoffs. But if you look at the rest of his season, like he allowed 2 sacks against Cleveland in week 8. Okay, you're going up against Myles Garrett. You allowed a sack against Tennessee in week 7. You allowed a sack against Atlanta, who brings a ridiculous amount of blitz looks. And you allowed a sack week 1 against the Raiders. Other than that, he was a pretty solid overall rookie tackle who got hurt after the week 12 game against Cincinnati, came back for week 18. I don't think he was 100% healthy. Now, I know a lot of people are going to talk about the lack of arm length with Will Campbell, and I just think it's a really bad take. Will Campbell, to me, was always a really good tackle, was my number 1 tackle in that draft class because of what he does with his hands. I think he's so technically gifted with the way that he is able to counter pass rush moves. Yeah, he can allow some of the more bigger, powerful edge rushers to get under his pads. Boye Mafe got him a couple times in the Super Bowl. Will Anderson got him a couple times. Like, some of those guys he still has problems with. He's still a 22-year-old offensive lineman that is a really good athlete. I think his quickness on an island is really good. He's got good foot speed. He's good with his hands. He run blocks pretty well for you. Like, yeah, you want to see him get better, but he was a rookie and he missed time and wasn't 100% healthy in the playoffs. I'm still all in on Will Campbell as a franchise left tackle here. And I think he's going to be really good. The rest of this offensive line, though, to me, a lot of question marks. And it starts with Elijah Vera-Tucker, who is a really good player. Like, Elijah Vera-Tucker is one of the best offensive linemen in football when he plays. The problem, he rarely plays. He was drafted in 2021, had a really good rookie season. Year 2, played in just 400 snaps. He dealt with an injury. Year 3, played in just 250 snaps. He dealt with an injury. 2024, he played a full season, and then he was hurt all of 2025. He's missed good amounts of time in 3 of his first 5 seasons. The Jets, who needed guard help, were fine letting him go. That's a little concerning to me. What I will say, I do think that he is a really good pass blocker, run blocker. Like, he does everything you want on the offensive line. You feel pretty good about that. They don't have a lot of depth. He's hurt both, I believe, injured both biceps and then tore his Achilles. Those were the injuries that he dealt with. There are some question marks that I have around this signing. And if he can't stay healthy, I don't really love the depth on this line at guard. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. At center, you have Jared Wilson, who to me, I'm surprised did not get as much, I'm surprised people didn't point him out as a big weak link in the playoffs as much as they did with Will Campbell, because he also allowed 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. He allowed 2 sacks in the wild card game against the Chargers. He allowed just as many sacks in the playoffs as Will Campbell did. I get it. He's a guard. I do like Jared Wilson a lot. He didn't grade out as a run blocker, but a really good athlete. I think the upside is there for him. Played left guard last season. They're kicking him inside to center, which is where he played at Georgia, and I thought was stellar as a center. It was one of my favorite prospects in the class. He's still got to get better. He's still got to get stronger. I think his core strength is a little bit of an issue right now, and some of the balance in the run game was a problem. But I do really like him at center. Mike Onwenu is where you feel pretty confident he should be good to go. I like what he brings to the table as one of the more stable guards in football. Their best pass protector right now, by far, he is just a monster, powerful guard. And for the gap rushing scheme and the power run sets that New England wants to run, he's a perfect fit for them. As a pass protector, grades out well, allowed just 2 sacks on the season. You feel really confident that Michael Onwenu at that right guard spot is going to be able to hold it down. And then at right tackle, you got Morgan Moses, who I do think is a good player, but you do have to start wondering about regression. He is going to be 36 years old next March. He struggled a little bit down the stretch, missed some time in 2023 and 2024, and was fully healthy for this team last year. I don't know that that's going to happen again. When Morgan Moses plays, really good player. I think he is a stable pass protector at the right tackle spot. He run blocks. Okay, he's not a superstar athlete, but I think he's an adequate run blocker for the position. I like Morgan Moses a lot. I think he's a really good right tackle. But New England was smart about this, and they drafted Caleb Lomu in the first round. I thought this was a really good pick. Caleb Lomu, to me, is a really, really good pass protector. I think the upside's there. Yes, he's got to bulk up and get stronger, improve his core strength. But if he can do that, I do think that the sky is kind of the limit for him. And if he can get better in the run game, I thought he consistently missed keys in the run game. There were just a lot of issues that I had there. There's some upside to me with Caleb Lomu as the tackle. I like him, but the rest of this depth I don't like. I was not a big Demetrius Crownover fan. Marcus Bryant I did like coming out of Missouri. I thought he was a fun athlete, but was a 7th round pick, I believe. I'm not really expecting a ton from him. At guard, you've got Andrew Rupich, who has kind of bounced around with the Titans. We didn't see him a lot last season. Ben Brown as a backup center. He's been with this team for a couple of years. I don't think they've got great interior depth. You got Mekhi Butler entering year 2. That's the biggest concern with me with this Patriots team. Elijah Vera Tucker, it's not if he misses time, it's when. They don't really have a guy that I feel confident can step in and play for them there. I would have just kept Garrett Bradbury around as a depth piece, because at least you could move Jared Wilson back to center. But we will see what happens here with this group. But it rounds out a really good offense. I mean, this offense doesn't have a lot of question marks. They ranked 3rd in offensive DVOA. They struggled a little bit in the rushing game. They were 20th in rushing DVOA last year, but a really solid group nonetheless. But let's talk about this defense, which was not a very good defense last year. By all metrics, they were the weak link of this team. They ranked 24th in defensive DVOA, 25th against the pass, 16th against the run. I think the big reason they ranked so low against the pass, despite having a very good secondary, they don't have the pass rushers. And that is going to be the biggest concern with this team because they don't have a number one guy. They don't have that guy that I consistently feel like is going to be able to create pressure. Harold Landry, I had a lot of Patriots fans coming after me last year because I talked about like, hey, I don't really think Harold Landry is going to be an impact player for this team. Like, I just don't see it. And he started the season off decent. Like, he made some nice plays early in the year. There was some upside there where he had a sack against or 2.5 sacks against the Raiders. He had a sack against the Dolphins. And a lot of Patriots fans were like, he looks great. He was not very good for this team last year. He had just 8.5 sacks, 32 pressures, and a career low 8.6% pass rush win rate. Harold Landry was overpaid at the time that they did it. I understand why they did it because they had to elevate the floor of this team. But he's losing a step athletically. He's a good run defender. Like, Harold Landry is still going to give them impact against the run. But for them to pay him like a 3-year, $45 million contract, I thought was a ridiculous deal at the time. And it remains a bad deal considering he can't even get you a 10% pressure rate. What you're hoping for as the Patriots this year is that Dre'Mont Jones can really take that next step and develop into being a legitimate stud pass rusher for this team. He started off his season in Tennessee, I believe, got traded around the midseason mark, and really started to piece it together for Baltimore. He ended up finishing the season with 7 sacks, had about a 12% win rate. He is a pretty strong 280-pound defensive player that I do like what he brings against the run. I think he's got some really solid like upside as a run defender. That's always been one of his strengths. And he really developed as a pass rusher for Baltimore in the second half of the season, where you saw a little bit more nuance and not just a flamethrower as a pass rusher. But again, he's kind of a wild card because we haven't really seen a lot of that from him. And they paid him like a 3-year, $36 million deal, maybe a slight overpay if he is what he was in Tennessee, who I think is an adequate number 2 or number 3, but he's kind of this team's number 1 here. You've got a couple of intriguing options here. Like Elijah Ponder was an undrafted free agent that this team had, who is a really solid, like, third piece. He's undersized, but he's got really good athleticism, quickness. He had 4 sacks on the season. Didn't start a lot. Like, he gave them just 300 snaps, but it's probably the first guy off the bench. And then Gabe Akis is very similar to me to a Dre'Mont Jones, to a Harold Landry as like a really high floor run defender, a guy that I think is going to be able to set a hard edge. He's a decent athlete. I didn't think he was anything spectacular. I don't know if I love that move for them, to be completely honest. Well, let me take it back. I do like Gabe Akis a lot as a player, but I don't know if Gabe Akis is a number 1. This team doesn't have a number 1 true edge rusher. Now, you are hoping, or not hoping, you are excited though, because even despite not having that, you have 2 of the better interior pass rushing players in the league. Milton Williams was awesome for this team last year. They get him from Philadelphia. He has a really good season, like 33 pressures, 12.6% pass rush win rate, 3.5 sacks, which was honestly low. He really started to turn it on towards the end of the season. Like, Milton Williams is undersized. He's not a horrible run defender, but he's more of a pass rush oriented defensive tackle. He's got ridiculous get off. He's got speed. He's, quick around the ball. Like, he's a guy that to me can really change your defense and be one of the best interior pass rushers in the league. He's got great swipes. He's really technically gifted with his hands. There's a lot to like about Milton Williams as a number 1 pass rusher. And then you've also got Christian Barmore here, who I do think it is another bit of a wild card. He's dealt with injuries throughout his career. He stayed fully healthy last season. The pressure rate was very similar, like 12 to 13% pass rush win rate. Those 2 guys next to each other, I think, are really, really good, a great duo. I mean, not a lot of negative things to say. Both do have some issues as tacklers at times, but they can create pressure. I don't think Barmore's as athletically gifted as Milton Williams. Milton Williams missed some time. You've got Joshua Farmer entering year 2, who was like a freak athlete coming out of Florida State. There's some intrigue there. I am a big Leonard Taylor fan. I feel like every time we see Leonard Taylor, he's just kind of got an it factor to him. I'm surprised we don't see him more. He was a guy I really liked coming out of Miami and hasn't really kind of made his stamp on the league yet. But I do think like there is upside with him. He's a good tackler. He's a solid run defender. The worry with this team is Corey Durden, who is stepping into a nose tackle role here. They had Kyrus Tonga last year, who was a really important piece for them. He's gone. He went to Kansas City. Corey Durden is a 305-pound former UDFA. He's played for 3 teams over the last 3 years. I'm not saying he can't do it, but he's a massive wild card. And I think that this team probably should have addressed nose tackle because both Milton Williams and Christian Barmore, I don't think either of them are nose tackles. Joshua Farmer, I think maybe could do it because he's got like crazy size. If I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to pull. He's 318 pounds, so maybe he could do it, but I didn't really love the core strength with him. This is a big wild card, though, is this Patriots defensive line. I don't love it. I think there are some issues here. And if they don't have a number 1 pass rusher and you don't have Kyrus Tonga who can just take up space in the middle, could be a little bit of an issue for these interior guys to create a lot of pressures. But let's talk about the linebackers. I don't have a lot of negative things to say here. You got Robert Spillane as your LB1 here. He was a really good signing for this team. Like, I think that he is just a guy that plays with his hair on fire. He is a really good run defender. He gets off blocks well. He hits hard. He's got some really good instincts playing downhill. He is the green dot player for this team. I don't think he's the most like elite coverage defender. He never really has been. But as your number 1 linebacker, I do like him. He was another guy that missed a good portion of time for this team last year, played in just 74% of their snaps. I do really like him. And then you got Christian Ellis as the other linebacker here, who's kind of I guess athletic, kind of rangy player in space that can make some plays downhill. He's another guy that's probably better as a run defender, not awesome in coverage, but you can use him as a blitz threat. There's some potential there with him. He had 4 pass breakups and limited snaps. I don't think they've got a lot else after that. You've got KJ Britt, who's a nice downhill player. Nnamdi Obiezor was a decent athlete coming out of TCU. Chad Muma was a good athlete coming out of his draft class with Jacksonville, but never really broke out there. It's not a lot of linebacker depth, but Robert Spillane is a perfectly suitable starting linebacker. And I think there's some upside there for him as fully healthy to get recognized as such. But we'll finish this out with the secondary, where you have one of, if not the best cornerback duos in the league. I think I probably lean with Houston with Kamari Lassiter, but maybe Indianapolis is up there just because I think they've got 2 top 10 corners, but that's my bias showing. Christian Gonzalez as the number 1. Christian Gonzalez in the Super Bowl was probably the best player on the field. I mean, he made so many like game-saving plays, 3 pass breakups in that game, had to guard Jackson Smith and Jigba. He was everything you could have wanted and more. The last 2 years, I mean, he missed time as a rookie, but the last 2 years he has started, he has been absolutely phenomenal. He's a guy that is a really good tackler. He missed just 1 tackle this past season, defends the run well. He allowed just a 43.4% win targeted, which is an incredible number. He was targeted 106 times. 13 pass breakups. I think the area that you would like to see Christian Gonzalez maybe take that next step is the ball production. He had just 1 interception on the season, and it came in the conference championship against Denver. But there's not a lot to dislike about Christian Gonzalez. He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the speed, he's got the fluidity, he can tackle, he hits hard, he defends the run. He is a really, really good CB1 and a guy that elevates this secondary a ton. And then you got Carlton Davis here, who is not the athlete that Christian Gonzalez is, but was really good for this team last year. Another guy that he allowed around 60% when targeted, didn't convert as many interceptions either, just 2. But he's a really solid coverage defender. I think he's better in like a zone situation where he's really instinctive. I think he can play in a variety of different schemes for you. There's a lot to get excited about, in my opinion, with Carlton Davis. The problem with him throughout his career has been injuries. It feels like every year. I mean, he's played over 1,000 snaps just twice in his career, and it was 2025 and 2020 with Tampa when they went to the Super Bowl. You do worry about his health, and he will probably miss time, just betting the average here. They don't have a lot of depth. You draft Karan Prunty out of Wake Forest, who I was not super familiar with. You bring in Kendall Vildor, who is a okay depth corner. Kobe Miner's entering year 2. He did not see the field a lot. Not a lot of depth, in my opinion, on the boundary corner spot. In the nickel, you got Marcus Jones, who is a really fun player, a guy that has size, or I take that back. He does not have size. He's a guy that has crazy athleticism, though. He's always around the ball. He's 5'8", 188 pounds, plays with his hair on fire in the run game. He's got ball skills. He's also an elite punt returner for this team. Like, you get a lot of that from him. He's just limited with his size. I think ultimately does hold him back, but he's feisty and he's a really fun player. Again, don't love the depth in the nickel spot. Like, you got Marcellus Dial and you got Charles Woods, who was with the Rams last year. Not a lot to get excited about. And then the safety room. I was really, really high on Craig Woodson as a prospect coming out of Cal, and he lived up to the hype as a rookie for this team. Was one of the more underappreciated safeties in the league. Awesome run defender, a guy that had an under 10% missed tackle rate, 78 tackles on the season. He had 5 pass breakups and interception. I don't think he's this elite coverage defender, but a guy that I think can move around the defensive formation, play free safety, play strong safety, defends the run well, tackles well, good instincts. There's a lot to like. He's just limited athletically. And then you bring in Kevin Byard, who is a really fascinating player to bring in. Kevin Byard in coverage, like, he was really good for the Bears last year, made some awesome plays, 7 interceptions last season. Over the last 2 seasons, he's got 8 interceptions. I mean, the guy's got crazy ball skills, tackles well. The problem with him is he's going to be 33 years old in like just a couple of days. He is very limited athletically at this point in his career. And I get the familiarity bringing him over. They give him a 1-year, $7 million contract, which I think is fair. But I don't think I would have probably just kept Jalen Hawkins. I thought that duo was good. You have Mike Brown. You've got Del Pettis. You've got a couple of interesting depth pieces here. But I think mostly those two. The secondary depth is a concern, as is the D-line. And it's why this defense did blitz a lot more in the playoffs. And I think it's why this team struggled down the stretch when their defense did get exposed a little bit more. But let's take a look at this schedule for the Patriots and talk about if I think that this team has what it takes. And right out the gate, like, yes, they played a ridiculously easy schedule last year. You still have, I think, 4 lock-it-in wins with 2 games against the Jets, 2 games against the Dolphins. I think you probably split with Buffalo. So if you go 5-1 in your division, I mean, there's some winnable games in here. You've also got the Steelers. You've got the Raiders. That's 7 wins for this team. I'm not going to go through every game, but when I look at this team, I think that this team did improve a lot on paper. I think that they've got a young quarterback, and there will be regression. Like, I don't expect drakemaye to have the same season he just had, but I think this team's going to be really, really good. I think they've got some winnable matchups in there, and ultimately, I think that this Patriots team wins 10 games. I see this as a 10-7 football team. That is still a wild card team to me in the AFC, where, I mean, you do have to play Denver. That's a tough matchup, especially if they're fully healthy. Obviously, we talked about Buffalo. You got Green Bay, you got Chicago, you got Seattle. You've got Detroit, the Chargers. There's some tough games in there, but ultimately, I think that the Patriots are 10-7, 11-6, maybe to be a little bit generous. But I think that they're still going to be a playoff team and be right in the mix for the AFC yet again. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you guys think that this Patriots team will be better or worse this season? Leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.